I'd like to start with a poem called Remember My Best. When I come to the end of my journey and I travel my last weary mile, just forget if you can any frowns and remember only my smile. Forget any dark words spoken, but remember the good I have done. Forget that there ever was heartache, just remember the laughter and fun. Forget that I stumbled and blundered and sometimes fell by the way. Remember, I fought some hard battles and won some by close of the day. So do not grieve for my going, and don't be sad for a day. But in summer, just gather some flowers and come to the place where I lay. And then in the shade of the evening, when the sun paints the sky in the west, stand for a moment beside me and remember only my best. Good afternoon, my name is Darren Crum and I'm honored to be the celebrant for this service today. We take time to reflect on the life of Robert Neil Grossman, known to many as Bob, to share the sorrow of his family, to express our sympathy with them and our support for them with their grief and their loss. We each come with our memories of Robert. Some may be common memories shared by others. Some are personal memories shared only between us and Robert. Each of us brings our own sense of sorrow in not only his passing, but for the many years that his memory left long before his body departed. We join our hearts, memories, and sorrow together today, and in doing so, perhaps our hearts are encouraged, our shared memories enriched, and our sorrow lightened just a little as we share this time together. I want to express the family's gratitude for your presence here today, especially those of you who join us from far away. Many of you have walked this journey with them for several years. There are no words that can truly express how much your love, your acts of kindness and compassion have meant to them during Robert's illness and now in his death. As we set aside the noise of the day, listen to the music and let it relax you. Listen to the words spoken about Robert. May they help you embrace his memory. Listen to the words of comfort and let them support you in your grief. But most of all, listen to your heart. Find a moment and a place in time that you shared with Robert that will be a lasting memory of your relationship with him. Rumi, the ancient mystic poet and scholar, once wrote, "The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear." So I invite you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, clear your mind of any distractions as we prepare to not only honor Bob, but to open our hearts and learn from his journey and our journey with him. Before we began today, you may have noted the song Grace and Gratitude being sung by Olivia Newton-John. After our moment of silence, we'll hear another song by an Australian artist, John Farnham. But for now, please join me in a moment of silence.
Touch of your hand will let me know you take me in and let me go. If not for love, why is it done, two into one, so easily? Lifted up by angels, higher than the world. to rust away from me. We're lifted up by angels, higher than the world, strong enough to live, bound to learn the secrets the angels never heard, close enough to heaven, above the rain. The darkness cannot reach us. Let the angels teach us. Only love remains. We're lifted up by angels, given wings to fly. Leave the night behind us. Trust the light to find us, even as we rise. We're lifted up by close enough to heaven, above the rain. The darkness cannot reach us. Let the angels teach us. Only love remains. We're lifted up by angels, higher than the world, strong enough to live, bound to learn the secrets angels never heard, close enough to heaven, above the rain. The darkness cannot reach us. Let the angels teach us. Only love remains. We're lifted up by
Robert Neil Grossman was born in Adelaide, South Australia on March 27, 1950, at the Calvary Hospital in North Adelaide, the middle child of John and Joy Grossman, which fits. It was the beginning of the baby boom. King George VI was in power, and Robert Menzies was the Prime Minister of Australia. He was raised with his two brothers, Gary, the youngest, who lives in Adelaide, South Australia, and his eldest brother, Kevin, who sadly died August 22nd of this year following a short illness. Much of Robert's early life is told to us by his family in Australia, who speak of his being raised in a family home on Glyde Street in the Adelaide suburb of Albert Park, in the house built by his father John in 1948, and this would remain the family home until 1985. His early days described the typical childhood of a young boy who was fortunate enough to have young, close relationships with his cousins, Carrie and Heather, with whom he'd share playtime and many family gatherings. And this was important because his mother at the time spent many years caring for his ailing grandmother who had come to live with them. And this left Dad to have to help where he could, including teaching Mom to drive. And that was very helpful. His mother had to his mother Joy would often drive Robert to different appointments. Because when he was only 2.5, he had physiotherapy appointments, among other things, to treat a bad shoulder, which likely was caused by a disease called poliomyelitis, which was very common at that time. Robert's dad, John Grossman, drove a 1939 Chevy sedan with rear doors that opened in reverse. You may have seen those. They're called suicide doors. Yeah, well, John loved the circus and liked to take the boys to share that experience. So his family tells of one such occasion, driving the sedan down a busy 6-lane highway, and young Kevin and even younger Robert are in the back seat on the bench seat. They didn't have seat belts back then, or if they did, no one used them. And Kevin casually leans over the front seat and says, "Dad, Robert's not in the car anymore." It turns out Robert was playing with the handle on the door, leaning against it, and the door opens up and he rolls out of this moving car on the 6-lane highway. Fortunately, he escaped being run over. He was taken to the hospital and turns out he was okay. The writer Bob Keeshan once wrote, "Parents are the ultimate role models for their children. Every word, movement, and action has an effect. No other person or outside force has a greater influence on a child than his parents." When we look back at the influences in Robert's life, we see his parents having some significant influences on the person that he would become. His parents had many skills. His mom was a qualified seamstress and made all the boys' clothes, if you can imagine, as well as all their play clothes, as well as dress outfits. And Robert even won first prize in a contest dressed as a baker wearing one of his mother's outfits. Perhaps even more of an influence was his father's skills as a carpenter. Robert's dad could fix anything. And more importantly, he taught these skills to his boys. An example is when he bought a carnival carousel horse, which the boys loved to play on. He turned it into a rocking horse. He also made caravans, or what we call travel trailers, which we made and he sold to other families. The Grossman family had many seaside summer holidays in their family caravan. Robert grew up attending various clubs and activities, as do all boys, playing on the beach in the summer, camping trips, swimming, attending the all-boys club known as the ABC, where Robert would do gymnastics. In fact, his brother Gary doesn't remember him playing any other particular sport other than gymnastics. In addition, there was the Cub Scouts with the Woodville Troop and the Church of Christ Sunday School for many years. He rode a bicycle to and from school, and perhaps learning from his father, enjoyed modifying the bike, adding gears to make it even sportier to ride around on. His brother Gary also recalls a unicycle built by the boys, Kevin and Robert, and they all three of them had learned to ride this thing. There is no report of numbers of injuries attached to that one, though. In 1962, Robert's family bought a delicatessen, a convenience store, colloquially referred to as the local shop or deli, selling a variety of items to people living locally and those from nearby suburbs. There weren't really any supermarkets around at that time. And opening a deli meant moving from their Glide Street home to Elizabeth Street, Croydon, where they would live in the house at the rear of the shop. Now, all the Grossman boys worked in the deli without pay, before and after school, helping with all the various items needing restocking. And this would be a pretty big responsibility because the shop was open from 7:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. It was only going to close 2 days a week, and that was Boxing Day and Christmas Day. And on occasion, the boys would even have to serve customers, which was not a very special activity they enjoyed doing, either for Kevin or Robert. But the family would continue running that shop until 1966 when they moved back to the family home on Glide Street. Now, Robert was academically inclined and did very well in high school, but his main interest and his main passion was in mechanics. His mother remembered him as a teenager. He was always interested in working on cars, Joy said. If you were ever looking for Robert, he was always in the shed or under the hood or bonnet of the car. After high school, Robert was fortunate enough in that he accepted an apprenticeship at a local glassmaking company. They owned a fleet of vehicles that required apprentices and mechanics to maintain both the business and the vehicles. And so over the years, he finished his apprenticeship and worked for the company for a while as a qualified mechanic. But Robert had a dream. And that dream was building himself a hot rod. Now, he collected all the parts he needed, and using an old Model T pickup and a large, powerful V8 engine, Robert would create his very first roadster. From the handmade steel frame and the hand-beaten aluminum body to the short exhaust pipes and the muffler, even the wooden plank he used as a seat so he could drive it. It was a project of love for him. His brother Gary recalls driving down the street in this creation. The ungodly roar of the engine, the violent shaking and rattling of the fenders, and the incredible G-forces he remembers pulling on him as the incomplete and unregistered beast accelerated down the street and back again. Not surprisingly, his father, who was usually a patient and quiet man, came out onto the street and proceeded to reprimand Robert for taking this unregistered and very noisy vehicle out of the yard. But Robert's passion was to see him joining a hot rod car club, which would hold its meetings in the house, at their little home movie room at the Grossman house. They had a lot of home movies. And eventually he would win a trophy at the Adelaide Showgrounds for one of his hot rods. I'm not sure if that might be the one there. Now, Robert had been planning a trip overseas, a working holiday of 1 or 2 years, and in 1972, at the age of 21, he sold his hot rod and set off on his overseas trip. He traveled to North America, often writing home, telling of his travels, and he worked in Alaska and here in British Columbia. And Robert returned to Vancouver, found and bought another car of his dreams, a Corvette Stingray. And while waiting for that vehicle to be transported back to Australia, he phones his parents and he tells them that he had met someone called Cindy Webster and he was getting married. They came to Australia, they had Christmas with his parents, John and Joy, but they didn't stay very long and soon returned to Canada. And his mother Joy is remembered having said, "We never got over losing him to another country." In the many years to follow, Robert and Cindy raised a family of 3 children, Cara, Shelby, and Sean, whom he loved very much. When he wrote his family in Australia, he always spoke about them because he was a proud father. Bob, as he liked to be called here in Canada, was a man who could fix anything. And he would help anyone with anything, especially vehicles. Now, I imagine if he saw someone on the road with a flat tire on the side of the road, he would be that one person who would actually pull over and help them change their tire. Encyclopedia Bob, as his son refers to him, knew a lot about a lot. The kind of man you could call for help or advice. If something needed fixing, he'd come to the rescue. Water pipes in your house frozen? Call Bob. Need new brakes in your car? Call Bob. Buying a used car? Bob to the rescue. And in the British TV children's series Bob the Builder, the main character's catchphrase is, "Can we fix it?" To which the characters reply, "Yes, we can." And Bob was a builder. He could make or build anything, and he had the shop and the meticulously organized collection of tools to do it. And it was not just his lifelong passion of building his dream hot rod, but other things, like the time he renovated the patio so his daughter Cara could have a place to roller skate, or the time he bought an old camper for $100 to renovate and travel with, interestingly, just like his father, but unfortunately that project never got off the ground. His son, Sean, describes Bob as the kind of father he would want to be, which is perhaps the highest form of praise. He was the kind of man who would always be there for his children. His children have many great memories to cherish with their times with their dad, the many trips, whether it was a day trip to the water slides, often with some amazing egg salad sandwiches, or spending the day at the racetrack or watching monster trucks, or simply just going to the movies. Being a father and a grandfather was very important to him. He very much loved being involved in the kids' lives. Robert would return to Australia several times over the years to visit his family and friends and to spend time with his aging parents before their eventual passing. But in 2009, Robert, who was now single, returned home to Australia and stayed several years. During these few years, he found work, he traveled around the state, never really settling down, and it was clear to his family and friends that he missed his children and his grandchildren. So in 2013, he returned once more to British Columbia, where he would buy a house and begin some renovations. Sadly, even with the years of healthy living with a passion for naturopathic medicine and his countless supplements, it would soon become more and more apparent that Bob had health issues. For many years to come, his family and his children would face the immense challenges and difficult decisions that the onset of Alzheimer's disease would bring. His illness would eventually see his being moved into a care facility where he would slowly slip away, Set free on the 26th of September this year, finally released from the disease that imprisoned his mind and his body. He leaves behind a life well lived and a loving family who never stopped caring. He is survived by his brother Gary, his children Kara, Shelby, and Sean, his grandchildren Oliver, Bella, Ethan, Kyle, and Lily, and his extended family and friends. And as we continue to reflect today, his granddaughter has prepared a slideshow to remind us of some happier times in our journey with Robert. Very nice. You didn't die just recently. You died some time ago, although your body stayed a while and didn't really know. For you had gotten Alzheimer's. You failed to comprehend. Your body went on living, but your mind had reached its end. So we've already said goodbye to that person that we knew, the person that we truly loved, the person that was you. And so we meet again today to toast your body's end, for it was true and faithful until right at the end. And so when we remember, we think of all the rest. We'll concentrate on earlier and remember all the best. For in the real scheme of things, your illness wasn't long, compared to all the happiness you brought the whole life long. We think of you as yesterday when you were fit and well, and when we're asked about you, it's those things that we'll tell. And so we meet in remembrance of a mind so fit and true, and here to pay our last respects, we say that we love you. We recognize that there are no easy answers as to what to do with our pain, what to do with the absurd, the tragic, the nonsensical, the unjust. It's a long road, a long goodbye when we slowly lose someone to Alzheimer's. We begin to grieve from the moment of diagnosis with no closure. We devote ourselves to the care of our loved one, often at the expense of taking care of ourselves. We experience emotions of fear and anger and guilt. So when they pass, there's a vacuum, an empty space. We now have extra time in our day, our week, but we're unsure how to reintegrate back into the mainstream of life. My message for you today is perhaps the best thing we can do is to be gentle with ourselves, to take the time to reflect on how Bob lived before Alzheimer's and not on the final years of his life. And as we reflect, we remember the things we loved most about him and how he touched and impacted our lives for good. They say that we love most about another person is also a character trait, an attribute that we also have. So while this disease and death may have taken him away, taking the time to reflect on our journey with Robert and our journey of grief can give him back to us. One cannot come to a crossroads of this nature and remain unchanged by what we have experienced. We have deep pain because we shared deep love. Now we have to decide what we want to do with that pain. It is possible to be transformed, to find new direction, and to allow our memory of Bob to live on within us. Not as a monument to our misery, but as a source of strength, love, and inspiration that he was before he left us. Bob would not have us remembering him only for his closing years, but by the life he lived for his family and for others. Now you might notice I didn't say we get over it. Why do we ever get over it? Why do we ever forget who he truly was and how much he loved us? We are forever changed, forever altered by this loss. My friends, that's the way it should be, for the depth of our pain reflects the amount of life and love we shared with this dear man. But above all, that little bit of advice I may have given you in the past few moments, I hope you'll give yourself a gift. As generous as he was, it's not a gift that Robert would have given you, nor I or anyone else in this room. For only you can give yourself the gift of time. Take all the time you need on this journey. Do not allow anyone to rush you or attempt to fix you. Take time to cry when you need to. Time to be angry, if need be. Sometimes we don't know what we need. We just need to be. So take time to walk, think, and talk out loud. Don't be afraid to feel all the range of pain and anguish, but I hope you will not hold on to it. Let it wash through you like the current of the ocean. For Robert not only was, he remains a part of you. Treasure his memory. Hold him close, for you will carry Robert with you always. In time, you will remember and perhaps laugh out loud at some of the experiences you shared with Bob. You may even believe you hear the sound of his voice from time to time. You will recall the way he fondly teased, the way he encouraged and supported, believed in, understood, but most of all, loved you. You will remember his hugs because he was a hugger. And in that moment, slowly, surely, some comfort will come. We will now listen to one last song that I'm sure everyone will recognize for its message.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue in you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do. They're really saying I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
As we close today, I'd like to say a short blessing. May you go forward today with a small flickering of light in your soul. May the memories of Robert begin to bring comfort rather than pain. May the words, touch, and presence of others bring solace. And may you be blessed in your comings and goings, graceful for a life lived and a legacy left behind. Thank you for joining Robert's family today in this time of remembrance, and especially those of you joining us from afar in Australia. We know that your thoughts and love are with the family here today. And as you leave today, there are some small building blocks by the door. Please feel free, if you wish, to take one as a small memory of Robert the Builder. Place it somewhere where you'll see it often, and each time you see it, think of Bob. Then put your memories in motion by mentioning his name and telling his story. God bless. May you go in peace.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Keep not from the memories. Remember the good times that we had. Let them slip away from us when things got bad. Clearly I first saw you smiling in the sun. I wanna feel your warmth upon me. I wanna be around. I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Weep not for memories. I'm so tired, I can't sleep. Standing